I've previously done some phenomenological videos where I've talked about the phenomenology of internal time consciousness by Husserl, and I've talked about the meaning and expression by Husserl, as well as the Epoche and all that. But I want to sort of clarify the phenomenological notion of the bracketing. I want to now. I have 4 videos about this where I'm actually reading from the passages and talking about it. But I want to just kind of go over what this really means, and sort of think about that, because I'm gonna have more videos about this, to kind of conclude my discussions about Husserl entirely, so I can move on to people like Heidegger and all that. But what the bracket is you're going from the natural attitude, which is the natural attitude is the empirical experience of things, which is experiencing things as thinking that they are physical objects, looking at them as they are physical, so that they are, for sure, looking at them from the realist standpoint. What Husserl does here in his ideas, he does this bracketing or epoche or reduction, which is reducing these things to just mere conscious objects, or just reducing them down to things that we aren't going to debate whether there are physical things behind them or not. No, I read this really recently, so I'm trying to think about it, or what this means for what I'm thinking. But what this is doing is, it's not really an idealist standpoint, because the idealist standpoint is saying that you're skeptical about the physical existences beyond your own conscious experiences. The phenomenological viewpoint here is not concerned with whether the conscious experience has physical objects behind it or not. It's not really concerned with that. It's not mattering. They find it to not really matter for the phenomenological philosophers do not really expand upon whether they think that there's objects behind these things or not. So what this is here, it's basically looking at the conscious experiences, the conscious phenomenon as things, as beings in themselves. Now I have a video called "The Ontology of Ideas," where I'm kind of talking about, from my idealist standpoint, how I can, sort of have a hierarchy of what I think is more verifiable or more likely to be physical. That's a different way of going about it. But what this is just basically saying that your conscious experiences, your conscious appearances, your phenomena in your consciousness, those are beings in themselves. Those are things themselves. Which is why Husserl has the saying "to the things themselves," because most of empirical philosophy is concerned, Berkeley and Locke and Hume, they're all concerned with what's beyond that. What's physical things are beyond that. And the phenomenological standpoint is against really being concerned with that. Edmund Husserl always said "to the things themselves," and he's talking about the conscious experiences. The conscious experiences, the phenomenon that we see. If I'm looking at this camera, if I'm a phenomenological thinker, I should not be concerned with whether this camera is a physical, true existent reality outside of myself, but I should look at this camera as it is a conscious being of my consciousness, which is sort of, where we get intentionality. I mean, that's because we are sort of, because if we have this idea of to the things themselves, or then we sort of are trying to have a phenomenological way of going about evaluating these things. So, comparing this to idealism, I want to just argue. I want to talk about whether I agree with this standpoint or not. In a way, I do agree. I do agree with it, but I guess I want to think about: does it really matter? Does it really matter to? Does it really matter to think about whether there are physical existences behind my conscious phenomena that I'm seeing? Is it really important to do that? Because from the idealist standpoint, it's skepticism and saying I can't really prove if there is or not, and it's a lot of idealism is concerned with arguing whether there is or isn't, or whether we can't prove that there is or not. Idealism is really concerned with that. It's concerned with figuring out how verifiable are all these things, or arguing that we should all be skeptical of all of them. Now, I guess I totally am thinking that this is probably the best way to go about it, because I was reading Husserl's Crisis of the European Sciences, and I was reading about the Lebenswelt, or the life world, and I guess if you know anything about the life world, which I'm going to make a video about soon, but if you know anything about that, then you know that I guess I'm being led to the belief that it doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. Now I still have the ideas of Schopenhauer and those thoughts in my head and stuff, but I do want to do that because I think it is important to try and figure out. It is my personal opinion that it's very important to try and figure out, if I can, if there's something in these appearances that's physical and outside of my consciousness. But I guess I agree with the phenomenological standpoint that we do need to do that. So we do need to look at things as they are in themselves. Look at the things, the conscious appearances in themselves. So is it possible, as I'm thinking, is it possible for a thinker to keep the phenomenological standpoint of phenomena and the idealist one? Because I want to sort of use both of them in my thoughts, because they're both very important. And but I guess, I mean, I've read this before. I've read a lot of this before, but I guess I just am thinking whether I can keep both of them, because for one thing, I want to keep the idealist idea of concerning reality, because I think it matters to try and figure out, if I can, if there are physical existences lying behind these phenomena. But then on the other hand, it's not always. It's. I think that the phenomenological standpoint of, phenomena should be done first, because we need to concern these things themselves that we're seeing before we concern what's beyond them. So I would say that the phenomenological standpoint of things that we're seeing is more important to go to use. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I'm gonna continue in a different video talking about intentionality and noesis and noema and all that, and then I'll do another one beyond that about empathy and intersubjectivity and about the life world.